Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Phil Oram here, sports columnist of the Oregonian, joined by the one and only Brenna Greene from KOIN 6. Brenna, happy Tuesday to you. How are we doing?
It's like I just saw you within the last 24 hours. But maybe I'm just making it up. Maybe the last few days are just all a figment of my imagination. So
You're not making it up. You and I were, in fact, both at the Corvallis Regional on Monday. You were there on Sunday as well for part one of that game, then subsequently rained out. I joined you for part two because I anticipated something weather-wise on Sunday. But I want to start somewhere a little different, Brenna, before we talk about the Beavers and the Ducks advancing to the Super Regional. Something even more important, the most important sporting event of the calendar year.
Heck yeah.
Is happening. If you're listening on Tuesday, it's happening tonight. If you're listening after Tuesday, it's happening this week. It is my son's final Little League game of the spring. Now, this is the first year, Brenna, that I have stepped to the plate, so to speak, as a coach. And I'm an assistant coach for the Yankees, the AA Yankees in the Southwest Portland Little League. And I just want to say that this has been one of the absolute joys of my parenting life. I'm sure a lot of the parents who are listening to this are nodding their heads in agreement. They know exactly what I'm talking about. They've been doing this for years. But for me, there'd always been this reluctance to get too involved with any one team because my schedule is so unpredictable, because I could need to be on a plane on a moment's notice for various things. I felt unreliable. I'm worried that maybe I didn't have the know-how to actually teach these kids the necessary skills, despite having played baseball, basketball, growing up. And I just have to say, like, coaching this team has been delightful. Getting to know the kids and their personalities. The time I've spent with my son, who's 8, has been really tremendous and special. But what I don't think I fully anticipated was, like, really falling in love with these other kids on our team and their individual personalities and their quirks and their various skill sets. So I do want to say that going into the final showdown tonight, the Yankees are undefeated.
Coaching Yankees.
We've tied twice. We didn't pick the team. It's not like we were like, we will be the Yankees, but we are the Yankees. And I just want to say that I think that, I was always a little averse to jumping into coaching for a variety of reasons, maybe some insecurities, and just an absolutely unbelievably rewarding experience, and spending time with, the other coaches, my co-coaches, Coach Steve, Coach Tom, Coach Lawson, the other parents who chip in. Yeah, I just think, this has been fun for me. And I guess my only message would be, if there are parents out there who have maybe felt a little bit drawn to jumping in and helping out with their kids' teams, but have, for whatever reason, maybe some of the insecurities I just expressed have held off, boy, jump in there. It doesn't matter. I mean, nobody's coming to me and saying, Coach Bill, can you help me with my, my technique? I mean, we're talking about, like, this is the very beginning of their careers. And, if there's something I don't know, there's another coach who does. And just the opportunity to be out there, throwing batting practice to the kids, fielding their at bats, playing catch with my son, just being outside. It's been a beautiful spring for the most part. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned some lessons along the way. So shout out to the AA Yankees on what has been a great season. There will be cupcakes after the game tonight. Kids are going to autograph baseballs for each other, but just really a great way to get back to sort of the basics of why we kind of all love sports and why we all love this. So it's been a lot of fun. Do you have any experience coaching, Brenna? I know you don't have kids, but I mean, have you ever chipped in and helped out at the youth level?
No experience coaching, but probably I'm going to go with the most impactful coach of my youth was a coach who had zero connection to my 5th or 6th grade basketball teams. Zero. Oh, the only thing was that he lived in our community and he decided he was going to coach a bunch of 5th and 6th grade girls. Zero connection. I mean, like, he had a niece who was our age. She wasn't on the team. And yeah, like, he totally, you were talking about that stuff, and he had such a huge impact on me. So my thought when you're talking about that is, even if you're not necessarily connected to a team, like, I'll give him a shout out. Barry Hassan, who I run into every once in a while, who, by the way, is like shorter than me. Not that I'm super short. I'm 5'7", so I'm not like, I'm not tiny or anything. But Barry Hassan, who just, like, like I said, zero connection to this team, and just decided he was going to go coach some 5th and 6th grade girls. And yeah, like, one of the most, impactful coaches of my life. So you don't even have to have a connection to really get in there and make it happen. So, maybe I'm talking to myself a little bit, but then again, like as you touched on, our schedules are so insane that it does feel a little scary to commit to something like that, because you just never know when you're going to be needed, which, by the way, is something we'll touch on later about crazy schedules. So your girl was not immune to it over the last few days. So yeah.
Our little league team, comprised of mostly second graders, some first graders, it's so fun because there is a real skill range, right? You've got the kids who, show up, they've got the backpack, they've got the 2 bats, they have, like, the textbook batting stance, they can make the throws, they're polished, for this level. And then we have kids who it's their first time playing, and to watch the growth of those kids has been maybe the most rewarding thing. Shout out to Milo on our team. Milo had never played baseball before, and there was a lot of hesitation, and his mom called me before the season and said that she thought that he would maybe be a natural, because he has a lot of skill as card throwing, like throwing cards so they zip. And I loved that, and I was like, I don't know how transferable those skills are, but I want to find out. And then, lo and behold, Milo has become one of our absolute stalwarts. We've got Marcus and Jameson and Matthew, who are like these natural hitters. We got Teddy, my kid, who he looks the part, Brenna. He's got the mullet, he's got the reflective shades, he's got his pants pulled up high. He loves being a baseball player. We're gonna work on the skill piece of it. But seeing all these different kids and their evolution over the course of these last couple of months, and seeing it, we have 2 games a week in a practice, so it's not a small time commitment.
No.
Like that, just hands-on interaction. We have one kid who, like, I relate to so much, because, like, and this is, when I played baseball, like, I really struggled with flinching on the pitch because I felt like the ball was going to hit me. Like, through Little League, this was a problem for me. And we have a kid on our team who struggles the same way. And so trying to help him through that, so far unsuccessfully, but having those conversations with him and being able to relate my experience, and, like, really trying to help him, overcome that, that I relate to so much, because I remember what that felt like. I remember feeling like everybody else thought it was so easy, and it's like, it was so reflexive to me. And so, like, I've really tried to peel that back with him. It's just been great. And I just have had a great time. I'm proud of our team. To your point about Barry Hassan, your basketball coach, youth coaches are heroes. Like, the people who sign up for the right reasons and do it the right way, are heroes, because you really do have a chance to, like, shape lives and be memorable and provide, like, really important baseline for these lives. Like, I remember my best coaches growing up. I mean, I had a little league coach named Jim Mahana in Beaver, Oregon, who, was tremendous, positive, supportive, helpful, taught the game, shout out to Jim. But it just, it's been a pleasure to be a part of. I'm proud of our team. I'm sad the season is ending. I'm getting 3 of my nights a week back, and I'm sad about it. So shout out Yankees. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I hope we can run it back next year and continue to run the table. Okay, Brenna.
There you go.
Gonna get off my soapbox now. By the way, I'm drinking the official tea of the Oregonian Sports podcast right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you drinking Egyptian mint?
Egyptian licorice mint from Yogi Tea.
Yes.
My longtime favorite tea that I started drinking as a student at the University of Montana. And you can only find it in select grocers. But Brenna, where were we? We were at the Ducks spring game? We were somewhere.
We were. Yes.
We were at the Ducks spring game.
The most important part of the Ducks spring game right here.
Absolutely. And I had a spare... I had some spare tea in my bag. My satchel, my computer bag, not my tea bag, but I had a tea bag in my satchel. And I gave you one. And you are now on the Egyptian licorice mint train. So it is the official tea of the Oregonian Sports podcast. Shout out Yogi Tea. Not that you need my shout out, but you get it anyway. Okay.
We love a shout out today.
So, you and I were both in Corvallis yesterday for the final 4 2/3 innings of the Oregon State Regional. The Beavers took care of business and finished off UC Irvine 11-6. We're going to get to the meat and potatoes of that game and what it means going forward shortly. But Brenna, you made the brave decision, and I just think we have to get to this
brave
first.
Is a word for it.
And you and I were talking about this on Sunday.
Yes, we were.
Whether or not to go to Corvallis when the forecast called for an atmospheric river, and there was plenty of uncertainty over whether there would be
weather,
even a game played.
Yeah.
And weather. Like my shirt right now tells you everything you need to know.
This is great podcasting.
Well, we're on YouTube too, but my shirt does say bad puns are how I roll. So shout out to my mother-in-law, big shout out day for this shirt. And you decided to brave it, and I decided not to. I ended up being vindicated in that decision because the game was suspended with 1 out in the bottom of the 4th inning. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience taking on the challenge of baseball at sea? It felt like a little bit, and how that all played out for you.
So here's the first thing, as you know, but our listeners do not. Did I technically go out and watch this game in the ballpark for any of those 4? I believe it was 4 2/3, but I don't know. I might be wrong. Maybe it was 4 1/3. Whatever. Any of those 4 innings? No, I did not, because there are TVs underneath the stands, and there's a food room there. And so I got there. I got there either midway through the 1st or start of the 2nd, because at least I did this. Both, for those who don't know these rules, there's rules for NCAA tournament games, and this is blanket across pretty much all sports, with the exception of maybe college football. If it is, and by the way, college football playoffs are not owned by the NCAA, so there you go. Any NCAA tournament event, you cannot shoot. So I cannot shoot footage at these baseball games. So therefore, technically, what I really need to be there for is post-game. So there was a discussion in our sports department the night before of, hey, head down, but if it looks like they're going to play, but you don't need to get there at the very beginning. So I timed it so that I got there with an hour left in the food situation at the game, because that is what matters. Okay, I got there at 6:30. I knew that the food room would close. I knew they wouldn't close the food room, but there would not be any more food available after 7:30. So that is how I timed this, because that is what I am motivated by. I think I technically got there at 6:45. Whatever. Had enough time to get food. So yeah, made the drive down, was not pleased about it, because, I too have an iPhone and can look at radar, and knew that it was only going to get worse as the night went on. But I did it. And so I got down there, I ate my food. And, another thing is that when I go on TV, I have to put on makeup, and that takes about 20 minutes to do. And so I, after I finished eating, I sat in the media room, in the media food room. It's technically not just for media, but whatever. Watched the game as I put on makeup. In the moment I slicked my lipstick across my lips, they go, at that point, I knew that they were going to lease delay it. Literally at that moment, they go, all right, we're picking back up at noon tomorrow. I'm like, yes. So that was awesome. I did end up like shooting a little something for my station that night since I was down there. And then shout out to my news director who did let me stay in Corvallis, because, you know, that's a lot. Like, by the time I would have left there, it was going to be, I don't know, after I shot something, probably like 9-ish. And then I would have had to turn around less than 12 hours later and go back down. So they let me stay.
Row upstream back to Portland.
Yeah, seriously. And by the way, I just want to say, if you looked at radar, you saw that 8 p.m. was when it was going to really hit. When did they decide to stop the game? 7:56. I'm like, yes.
So Brenna, the Beavers led 6-4.
Yeah.
At when the game was called. Their final run, if I'm not mistaken, came on a wild pitch, like a wild pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, Dallas Macias tried to stretch a double, and to beat the throw, he slid headfirst into second base and went sliding past second base, like almost like in a comedy film. You know,
it was kind of like artistic.
I'm trying to think of like the movie reference, but it's almost like somebody being like sliding headfirst down a buffet table, almost is what I'm picturing. Like,
yeah,
just like can't stop. I wrote that the only thing missing was the yakety sax Benny Hill theme music playing over that stretch of the game. But what's funny, I mean, I will say is, you know, so total chaos at the end. Eric Segura had a wild pitch to start the bottom of the fourth that ended up hitting the Irvine batter on the backside. He goes to first, and that's when the umpires called it. I thought that all all that was going to be over, right? When after they let the field dry out and came back the next day, and then literally the bottom of the fourth inning resumes on Monday, and the first play, or for the third out in that inning, it's a fly ball to Brady Casper in right field, and he misplays the ball and drops a pop fly in right field and leads to a run for Irvine. So it was like, what is happening? Maybe it wasn't just the rain, as chaos was ruling supreme. But I want your perspective, because you were there, and there were a lot of Beaver fans on social media and from what I could see on TV who thought that was a crazy decision to suspend the game. And I think Mike Parker, who is a friend and a wonderful figure at Oregon State, I think he also expressed some surprise or disappointment that they suspended the game. From what I was seeing, multiple factors, including the integrity of the game, but primarily safety. It just seemed like not conditions where baseball, especially a game so important, should be played. What did you think as somebody who did have to look at the elements from outside of the food room?
Yeah, so a lot of I would have gone out there eventually. I would have gotten my merry self out there, but because of the fact that I wanted to eat and then I needed to put on makeup, I was like, okay, I got some other things I need to take care of first here. So yeah, I mean, the main thing that I took was that the people who were photographing, that's not the word I'm looking, photographing, there we go.
Photographers?
Yes, photographers, but I needed a different pronunciation for the verb. Photographing the game. There were like 2 or 3, there was at least 3 that came in, and they were just sopping wet, and all of them said, "Thank God." They all were just like, no, they could not keep playing in that. Like, there is no way. Now, of course, you get the perspective from Oregon State staffers who are like, we've played in worse,
Yeah.
which maybe they have. But yeah, those photographers were looked like the Loch Ness Monster, and it was definitely from what I saw, it seemed like the right decision, even if I understand the inherent advantage that it did give UC Irvine to get an extra day's rest.
Irvine brought their Friday their front of the weekend pitcher back out to start the the 5th inning on Monday. It gave him an extra 12 hours of rest. And granted, it went spectacularly poorly. And he I don't even know, did he make it the full inning? But he got pulled
for the kid.
But I mean, there is certainly a world where, hey, that guy gets an extra day of rest and he's ready to go, and all of a sudden you go from being totally depleted in your bullpen and all your pitchers are overextended. Well, now your Friday morning pitcher, your Friday afternoon pitcher has had 72 hours, and in baseball postseason, you have to do some funky things with your pitching staff to survive these things. There's a world where he comes in and throws really well and the Beavers lose momentum, and then now they're in trouble, and then you have to come back and play another game. So that did not happen. The Beavers absolutely took care of business. They got a couple more bombs. I thought it was, they scored 11 runs and still managed to, was it 14 base runners they left stranded? They left a lot of runners on the bases, and
game.
There were, I think Gavin Turley came up with 2 grand slam opportunities. It's just, with the bases loaded, and like you kind of just at this point expect him to to hit bombs in that scenario. Did not. The Beavers, kind of walloped Irvine in that final game, and it could have been a lot worse. They could have beat them 20-6. So Oregon State firing on all cylinders, especially offensively, going into the Super Regional. Really, really tough opponent. Kentucky, the number 2 overall national seed, going to Lexington on the road. We know Oregon State has not been as formidable on the road as at home. What do you think of the Beavers' chances to come out of Lexington with a ticket to Omaha?
We'll see. I mean, I'm not super optimistic, to be completely frank with you, with just how this season has gone and the up and down nature that it has been for Oregon State. But everybody has a chance at this point. It's obvious that the Beavers are, they didn't exactly receive the seed that would denote how their season went. So they have a stronger chance. If I'm Kentucky and I see that my 15 seed is OSU when we start this thing, I'm like, what the?
Yeah, absolutely.
This team that's been in the top 10 all season, and now you're just giving us this team?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Arizona wins the Pac-12, and then they just completely flame out in their regional. That's the thing about baseball. It can be really all over the place. We saw it last year in just the fact that Oregon got to host a super regional. Like, what? How did that happen? But that is, that's the nature of this tournament. It is very, it's very streaky. Let's put it that way. So, who knows?
So speaking of streaky, Oregon, like you just said, hosted a super regional last year. They go down to Santa Barbara and end up winning that super regional in 3 games. Or excuse me, winning that regional in 3 games to earn a trip back to the super regionals. They're going to Texas A&M, and that's a tough matchup as well. That's a really tough one. Tough place to play. Absolutely. We didn't coordinate that, but we nailed it. One person I know who is an observer, we'll say, of Oregon baseball, who I was talking to last year during going into the Super Regional against Oral Roberts in Eugene, said last year he would have been 98% sure they were going back to Omaha. And this year he's 2% sure they're going back to Omaha. So this is probably the year they do it, when it feels less of a clear path. Oregon has not been to the College World Series since 1954. We're coming up on 70 years. There's only a few members of that team. In fact, it may only be a couple members of that 54 team who are still around. I talked to some of the families last year for a story. I talked to one guy last year who was 89 then. He's 90 now. He's still rooting for the Ducks to get there. He said that he's kind of running out of time here to pass the baton to the next Oregon team to reach the College World Series. So they're ready. But we have to talk real quick, Brenna, and I don't know how much of that game you were able to watch on Sunday just because you were in Corvallis, but
Yeah,
Kevin
not
Sider,
much.
the pitcher for Oregon,
Mhm.
transfer from I always thought it was Quinnipiac, but I guess it's Quinnipiac, whatever. Kevin Sider.
We're sorry.
an
We try to get
absolute-
things right, but I thought
I'm
it
just
was
gonna tell. I'm gonna tell you all the possibilities, and then, but then like on the broadcast they're saying Quinnipiac. I think that was it. I think that's it. I always thought it was what you just said, but they were saying Quinnipiac. So
okay.
I don't know. Is that in Maine? Is it in Maine?
Ooh, I don't know about that one.
Where is Quinnipiac University? Connecticut, Hamden, Connecticut. Why wasn't it just Hamden University? We're gonna have to do research on this. That would be easier for everyone. Kevin Sider was masterful in that game, especially in a situation where you need a good start from your starter. He throws a 4-hit shutout. 2 of those hits came in the 9th. Pitched a complete game shutout. Just an absolute masterpiece in the biggest moment. Really cool to see the Ducks get back to this stage.
Generally, incredible pitching for them down at Santa
Mhm.
Barbara. I mean, Grayson Grinnell, you got 9 strikeouts in 7 innings. Just their pitching staff is on fire right now, and that is what you need in this.
Mhm.
Getting long innings. I that's the word. It's not the word I'm looking for, but whatever. Getting that many innings out of a pitcher is so huge in this tournament, especially in that first weekend, because it can be a marathon. Now you've got something that's a little bit more traditional that everybody recognizes in the 3-game series. But then if you do get to Omaha, once again, it gets nutty. So that's, if they can keep this up, if they can keep that up down at Texas A&M, they have a really, really good shot. I mean, if there's this is a no duh thing to say, but if there's one position you want on fire during this time of year, it is your pitching staff, because in college it is so different than the pros. You basically have 3 guys, and then you or if you're a good team, you have 3 guys, and then you hope that everybody else shows up in that time of need, because that's just the nature of the beast. So this is really a really good omen for them going into that regional. But as we've said, Texas A&M is a rowdy place to play. It is bananas down there, as somebody who knows someone who used to be actually the baseball administrator down there. So I've been hearing about Texas A&M baseball for a few years. They were like, you coming to College Station? I was like, I don't think my bosses are going to pay for that one. I think we'll hold off there. So
it's pretty incredible that we're a week away from or less than a week away at this point from potentially having 2 local teams in the field of 8 in the College World Series, which is certainly
Crazy.
plausible. But they're both just by function of the way the bracket is laid out, they both go in as underdogs to their supers.
Yes.
So we could be back here next week talking about 2 teams in Omaha, no teams in Omaha, or one of them sneaks through. I mean, certainly coming into the postseason, you would identify Oregon State as the as the most likely to get there. I mean, they've been the better team all year. They've, been the stronger top to bottom team. But, like you said, it is the postseason. Anything can happen. Last year, Oregon was 2 outs away from a return to Omaha in that second game against Oral Roberts. Really weird stuff had to happen for them to get in that position, including an unprecedented comeback in game 1 of that series against Oral Roberts.
Yeah.
Were they down 8-1? You were
Honestly,
there.
I do not remember.
I mean, this is information that's available, but something
Yes.
like along those lines, 8-1, come back, win that game on a walk-off, come back the next night. They have Oral Roberts against the ropes, lose on a walk-off in the 9th inning, come back the next day and get pretty soundly defeated in game 3. Gutting for Oregon, but they're back, I mean, not at home, so they don't have that advantage, but
Yeah.
and you have to admire what Mark Wasikowski continues to do there in terms of getting high caliber players in there and getting the most out of them and coming up big in big moments. I mean, that program has really made huge strides under Waz. So again, shout out podcast, shout out to Waz.
This is not me saying that this is the best season of college baseball that this state has seen, but I think I would say that in terms of the overall health of our 3 D1 programs in this state, it has never been better.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
Yeah, you've got 2 teams in super regionals, which has never happened before. So there's never, I got curious during the press conference yesterday. I was like, has there ever been a year that Oregon and Oregon State have both been in a super regional? And the answer is no, sir. And then, Portland was pushed San Diego to the brink in the WCC tournament. They were, a few 10 feet away from a home run in the bottom of the 9th that would have sent that thing to a second game, and who knows what happens there. And San Diego, by the way, pushed Oregon to extra innings. So that says something about the overall health of that Portland Pilots program as well. They are so close to breaking through. It hasn't happened yet, but there will be a year, I think, in the near future in this state where we have all 3 D1 baseball teams in a regional, which is just so huge for an area that, to be completely frank, is just not known as being a baseball powerhouse. We are not the South. I mean, yes, Oregon State is known, but this is not our bread and butter up here, and yet it's happening for all the programs. And
as the first base coach for the AA Yankees in the Southwest Portland Little League, I mean, I can attest to the struggles with weather, the difficulty of getting practices and games played early in the season. And that is part of what you're speaking about. I mean, this is, baseball historically, the South, Southern California, Arizona, places where you can, you've got fields ready to go in February. And, that is not here. Obviously there's tournaments played outside of Corvallis and Eugene and Portland, in the early stages of the season, but, I think you're spot on. I mean, obviously in terms of like the high watermark for baseball in this state, it has been Oregon State's 3 national championships, no question. But to speak to the overall health and vitality of the sport in the state, you had 3 teams coming into this year, this spring, that maybe should have been in the postseason. And, now that you have 2 in the super regional, I mean, Oregon State and Oregon, by the way, if they both make it through the supers and they both win their first game in Omaha, we'll have Oregon and Oregon State playing each other in the College World Series, which would be, I guess, if they both lose their first game too, that would be very cool.
That would be awesome. Now you got me thinking. I don't think that's going to happen that way, though. Unfortunately,
it's asking a lot. It's asking a lot of things to come together at the right time. But I, for one, I'm here for it. But you know what? Like I'm always like I want the poetic outcome, and we almost had it yesterday. I want to say in Corvallis, I want to acknowledge that Travis Bazzana in the bottom of the 8th or the top of the 8th inning, Oregon State was the visitor. Bazzana's up for his last at bat. Guerra had just hit a home run. Is that right? At the bottom, who hit the home run right before Bazzana? Who's in the lineup right before Bazzana? Was that Guerra or Macias?
No.
Either way, Macias, was it Macias who absolutely buried one over the left field wall, like an absolute like.
I just know that Guerra's been hitting 8th traditionally, and Bazana's first. So yeah, that's
okay. So either way, Bazana comes up, and with a chance, I thought it was to hit back-to-back jacks, but maybe I'm off. But Bazana comes up, first pitch, inside pitch, turns on it, and absolutely hammers it to right field. Like, everybody sitting on press row for about a second thought it was a homer, thought he had like delivered, like the storybook shot, I mean, most decorated player in Oregon State history, maybe the top overall pick in the MLB draft, final at bat at Goss Stadium, homer over the right field wall, and it curled just foul. And he ended up chopping out to second, and that was that. But so you don't always get the storybook, but the result still is pretty good. So I'm going to root for that in Omaha, just like I was hoping that like a gust of wind grabbed that ball and pushed it fair, just because it would have, as one of the other reporters sitting down the row from me said, some stories just write themselves. That would have been one of them. But, Oregon State playing Oregon and Omaha would be that too.
I just want to add one thing about my lovely stay in Corvallis. These are things that people don't think of. Because I was lucky to stay there, and I'm very thankful to have stayed there. Just want to reiterate that one more time. Did I leave my apartment thinking I was going to be staying in Corvallis?
I'm going to say no.
No, that was not what I was thinking. So, did I wear the same clothes back-to-back days? You bet your bottom dollar I did. So if you saw me Sunday, Monday, same thing, baby. And then the other thing is I got a lovely 11 p.m. trip to Winco, the only thing that was open. Thank God there was something open, because I had no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no nothing.
What hotel were you staying? I mean, don't tell me what hotel you were actually staying at, but
no.
Your hotel did not have a complimentary toothbrush and toothpaste at the front desk for you?
I guess I didn't ask for it.
You don't need to go to Winco. They have little toothbrushes.
Well, okay, I still needed to go because I didn't have deodorant.
Fair enough.
I didn't have any contact solution. So those are things that I still needed to go and procure for myself. Let's put it that way. So no matter what, I was making that trip to Winco, so I might as well just go and get what I needed. You know what I mean? And yeah. But anyway, so yeah, it was a very interesting span of a few hours, to say the least. But this job, it's never boring. I'll give it that. It is. That's what I like to tell people. It's never boring, and every day is different. And that day was a different one. I've never had that in my. Oh my gosh. I need to look this up. I think I just passed my 10-year. I did. I just passed my 10-year anniversary in the business. Totally forgot about it. There you go.
I don't have confetti, but if you want to pause,
yes, please. Everyone
confetti.
Celebrate me. I somehow survived this for 10 years. Oh, I don't know if that says good things about me or that I'm clinically insane. I'll have to look that up. Now. Gosh, that's so me to just like completely not think about it until well past the fact, I would say, that I passed 10 years in the business. So there you go.
From the headlines, Brenna, the Portland Trailblazers, local basketball team, purchased the lot next to their practice facility in Tualatin back in February for $4.6 million. What is your immediate reaction to the Blazers expanding their footprint in Tualatin?
Okay. Like,
Well, I have thoughts if you want to hear them.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is just, there's nothing, it doesn't surprise me. But it's still a good sign. And I actually, I said this to my mother last night. So it is,
shout out Mama Greene.
Shout out Mama Greene. My mother, see, here's as moms, we look at things through rose-colored glasses for our children. Okay?
Our?
Yeah, no, okay. All right, okay. Moms generally look through rose-colored glasses for their children, okay?
Okay. I just was clarifying.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. The only thing I'm a mom to is my cat Sequoia. So
shout out Sequoia.
Shout out Sequoia, who is currently in my bedroom and is so smart, has figured out how to open up doors in my apartment. So now I have to stick a towel underneath my door so that he can't stick his paw through and get himself out. I don't really know how he does it, but he's somehow figured it out. So, she's texting me and she's like, I swear wherever you go, teams do well and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, Bob, I regret to inform you. I think you're looking through this a little bit, like I said, through rose-colored glasses, because these things are going to happen. Some teams are going to do well and some teams aren't going to do well. And I was like, case in point, how have the Blazers done the last 2 years? And she was like, yeah, I guess so. Like, she was like, maybe next year. And I go, how about 5? Like, that's what this is going to be. But, and I said to her, I said, but I don't subscribe to the notion of Jody Allen. She talked about, Jody selling the team and how it needs to be sold. And I said, I understand that. I get that. But I also don't subscribe to the notion that Jody Allen is an absentee owner. I don't subscribe to that. And this would be another example of that. So, I mean, you don't set up a G League team if you're an absentee owner. That is an operation that is losing money at the end of the day. So,
probably absentee owner is just a loaded term that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like, I don't really care how present Jody Allen is, as long as she signs the checks and is greenlighting and approving, necessary investments into the franchise. And the truth is that the Trailblazers practice facility is, while it's very nice and it's been renovated in the last decade, is still on the smaller side the NBA. And so while the Blazers have not said specifically what their plans are for this space or what a timeline might be for them to expand the practice facility, if that is in fact what they're planning on doing, I mean, that's kind of the obvious interpretation of this deal, or to build a whole new facility or something along those lines. I would assume expansion. There is an arms race in the NBA for everything outside of what's covered under the salary cap, which is players. So you see teams investing heavily in their assistant coaching staffs, investing in their analytics staffs, investing in their training medical staffs, and that all requires space. That all requires having the tools that will make those people want to work there. I mean, without having a great familiarity with the Blazers training room, or like what devices are available to them at the practice facility, as an example, like the Blazers might have this, but do they have an underwater treadmill? Because that is something that exists in other places. They might have that. Do they have enough plunge pools for multiple players, at a given time? Like, do they have the resources where players come in? Do they have enough, lounge areas for the players at the practice facilities? Because you want players at the practice facility a lot. And so utilizing that space and making it making it all things to all your players, to your staff, is really kind of where the league is at. And so, yes, absolutely, Jody Allen making a necessary investment, where it's needed. I mean, I think to your point, if you are totally detached from the team, you're not listening to the executives who are asking for a G League team. She did sign off on that and made it happen. You are not, buying up land around your practice facility to expand it. She signed off on that and made it happen. I mean, $4.6 million that may be chump change to Jody Allen, but like, I mean, you see teams cut costs all the time, when it is, less than that, when it's to save $1 million here or there. And another area I'd point out that the Blazers are, likely going to take a financial hit, in the name of a better product and, improving kind of the state of the franchise. I reported a few weeks ago, that there were efforts underway to, get out of the Root Sports deal for this upcoming season and go over the air. Well, Root's not just going to say, okay, Blazers, that's fine. Like, no, they're going to lose millions of dollars by getting out of the Root deal because nobody can see. I mean, you can find Root Sports in Portland. It's not impossible, but it's expensive. And you are pricing out your fans, your casual fans who just want to settle in and watch the Blazer game or have the Blazer game on in the evenings. And so because of the fact that Root Sports decided to go to a premium tier of cable last year. So the Blazers are taking a financial hit there as well. So I agree with you that Jody Allen is not the spendthrift that others will make her out to be. But the reality is the team does need to be sold.
Yes.
And that is, that has been clearly laid out by, what we understand Paul Allen's, trust, the state of Paul Allen's trust to be. The team and the Seahawks will be sold on some timeline. I think for the sake of clarity and for moving forward, sooner is of course better. But there are sands of change happening in the NBA right now. The media rights deal is in the process of getting finalized. There's going to be a new CBA. There's a lot that is going to change the value of the NBA of NBA teams in short order. And I would also just say, people want Phil Knight to buy the Trailblazers, which is great. Fine, Phil, buy the Trailblazers. I mean, you're 87 years old, but if that as a legacy project is something you want to do, and set up your hometown team for generations to come, great, buy the Trailblazers. It's not going to be for $2 billion. So people were, devastated that Jody wouldn't engage with Phil for $2 billion in the summer of 2022. Well, we're not even 2 years past that yet. And, team values are double that. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that, whoever buys the team is going to have the development rights at the Rose Quarter at what is now the beginning stages of a massive, multi-agency, reimagining of the entire Central East Side. So there's so much value in the Trailblazers that I think right now is unrealized value. So to me, it does make sense for Jody Allen to maximize the value of that because this all goes to charity eventually. So it wouldn't have made sense for Jody to sell it at $2 billion. I think from a city of Portland and a civic responsibility standpoint, like, yes, let's get this team in the hands of the person who's going to own it for the next 30 or 40 years so that they can start, implementing their vision. But there is a dance in trying to find kind of the right spot to do all of that. And in the meantime, Jody Allen is, she's investing in the necessary ways. I mean, there might be additional ways she could be investing to really go above and beyond. But again, to your point, doing things like not just letting the Root Sports deal expire next year and then going over the air, investing in the G League team and buying up this lot next to the practice facility shows that there is an investment being made in the Trailblazers, and there is just a false narrative out there that there isn't.
Yeah, I haven't really understood that. I mean, even like they redid the entire kitchen area, the entire, cafeteria area in the practice facility this year. That is not something that happens if somebody just wants to sell this team. It's like, oh, that's the next
strip it down and sell it for parts or whatever. Yeah.
Well, that'd be a, well, that's a next owner problem. That's not a current owner problem. That's a next owner problem, because that's something that does take time. It's not a ton of money in the eyes of Jody Allen, I'm sure, but that is something that does take time, resources, money, and you think, oh, that's the next person's job if she just is completely not engaged. And I mean, this is no secret. Like, this team was never gonna be sold before the NBA TV media rights deal was figured out. Like, that is going to change how much this team is worth. And yeah, it's just that's always kind of that's always been the case. I feel like that's always kind of been the behind the scenes messaging from everybody involved is that, hey, this is not getting sold until this media rights deal comes through. So everybody can keep complaining if they want, but we're going to at least hold on until 2025, 2026. So this is the situation. This is what it's going to be. And just by the way, I will be stunned if it ends up being Phil Knight's team. But you never know. I don't think there's any love lost between those two parties.
I mostly feel like the ship has sailed as well.
Yeah.
And like there are 30 of these, soon to be 32 probably, but there are 30 of these, and it is a competitive landscape to come in and buy NBA teams. And so, I don't think Phil Knight is going to get a sweetheart deal just because he is Phil Knight and he's in Portland. And I think there's a lot of reasons that would be spectacular for the city of Portland.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's going to have to compete financially, and I'm not sure that's how he would want to come in on this. So, like I said, I mostly think that this ship has sailed. And I just point out, the Blazers, Paul Allen dies right at the start of the 2018-19 season. And there's kind of a bit of a shell shock, I think, throughout the organization, kind of where things go next. And so everybody's trying to figure that out. And in the time since Paul Allen died, you had Paul's death in 2018. And then in the middle of the next season, you have a pandemic that makes basically everything stop for multiple years, where, from a business standpoint, you aren't sure what you have, what the value is. It becomes kind of just like everything's sort of on hold. And then you start up again in 2022, 23, 21, 22. You have an investigation of your basketball operations. You have the president of business leave. Chris McGowan leaves. So you're replacing the top positions. I think the Blazers, for better or worse, I mean, for worse, obviously, have been sort of
they've been in flux a lot.
Kind of been hit from all sides over the last 6 years. The problem is it's 6 years. It's been 6 years since Paul Allen passed away, and there hasn't been like just sort of a clear direction. But I do think, in defense of the Blazers and sort of like the way this like has been spun up narrative-wise against them, there has been a lot that this franchise specifically has had to navigate. The pandemic's not specific to them, but there are other factors specifically to them that I think have set the franchise back. And then you're also trading your franchise, pillar in the middle of all that as well. So, I'm not as bearish on the Blazers just as an organization as others seem to be, but you do want to see meaningful progress. And I think small things like buying up land next to the practice facility, maybe it's not for the fans, but that does feel like, a meaningful investment in the franchise. So glad to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that is really hard for fans, and this is something I totally understand, is that, as you kind of hinted at throughout this entire podcast, there's no timeline for when she needs to sell this team.
Mm-hmm.
And not having any sort of clarity, I think, makes people nervous. And that I totally get. I totally get that, of like, well, there's no, she must sell it by this date. That does not exist. It's kind of just nebulous. Mm-hmm. And so I can understand from a fan's perspective why that is so difficult, because you just don't have anybody who's willing to, you can't commit to this owner because this probably isn't going to be your owner long term, but you just don't know how things are going to go. And then you add on the fact, and I will say this, you add on the fact that she has never spoken on the record.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody knows this person. And when you don't know the person, and then and there's all this nebulous about when this person is supposed to sell the team, I can totally understand why that makes fans anxious. I mean, that would make anybody a little bit anxious. So those are the two things that I totally can understand the trepidation within the fan base on, because you have no timeline and this person has never spoken publicly in their 6 years of being around this team.
But these
Those
are
two
also only
things-
things. It's true, totally true. Everything you're
Yep.
saying is valid, and we're gonna wrap this. But like,
Yeah.
this is stuff people only care about because the team isn't good. Like, if the team was like competitive or playing in the Western Conference Finals or was winning in some way, whatever that looks like, this would all be background stuff. Like, people only really care about ownership and where's the money being spent and are you investing when like the product on the court is not good. And, for several years, for a variety of reasons, the product hasn't been good. And so then you start looking around and saying, well, why is that? And that's why, the target has landed on Jody. And, maybe some of it's fair, I mean, I think there's real questions about, obviously who's coaching the team, who's making the moves. I mean, there's a lot of things to like pick apart about like where the Blazers are in terms of, why they aren't good, but they're also in a rebuild and like they're necessarily in a rebuild. And so, that is painful. And it just leads to conversations like this about the owner. And when a team is good, nobody should be talking about the owner. So, a lot to unpack down the road over time. There's building renovations supposedly going to happen at the Moda Center. We're kind of still waiting on real clarity about that. Like, what are you actually doing? Like, how much are you actually investing in this to bring what is frankly a very dated arena into the 2030s? And so these are all things that we'll continue to talk about and we'll continue to look at. But I did think it was interesting. I wanted to talk about it. Thank you for your thoughts. And, I thank you, Brenna, for indulging my trip down Little League lane, as we'll call it. KOIN 6 doesn't have to cover the undefeated Yankees final game of the season on Tuesday night. I can drop a pin with the location in case KOIN 6 does want to cover the final game of the undefeated Yankees Little League AA season, but we can talk about that offline. But my thanks to you, as with every week, for carving out the time, for your insight, for making it back safely from Corvallis.
I regret to inform you that today is one of my off days. So I'm sorry. I am unable to make it out to your Little League game.
Can we get Jamie Hudson on the phone or somebody? Can I get who I need somebody from KOIN 6. Do not make me call Nick Krupke. If you want Fox 12 to have the exclusive, they can. Okay. All right, Brenna, thank you as always. Appreciate it. Enjoyed the chat. We will be back next week. We'll have again more clarity on what's going on with college baseball. If we have teams going to Omaha, if we have reporters perhaps going to Omaha, or if the season is functionally over for the calendar year, for the academic year, I guess I should say. Yeah. For Brenna Greene, who survived a monsoon, an atmospheric river.
Yes, please give me all the kudos. What a trial it was, truly.
Although I've been told that all the reporters, where the media sits at Goss Stadium is under a roof, and I was informed that everybody kept nice and dry there, so you would have been fine had you ventured outside. So, just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was doing other things. I didn't exactly want to be putting on my makeup out on the field. I thought that, you know what that's ripe for? That's ripe for a shot from an ESPN camera on the broadcast of me doing my makeup, and I do not need that online.
But wouldn't it have been more authentic for you to do a live stand-up from the field, just totally drenched, makeup running, you look like a member of KISS, and like doing your stand-up, like to really like convey the severity of the elements?
Yeah, I did my stand-up underneath the overhang because I like myself. And also because I do have a camera that I shouldn't get wet if I can help it. I think my bosses would appreciate that.
All right. Well, it was just an idea. I'm not a programming director, but I do have a lot of great ideas. So
great ideas and great puns.
Once again, for Brenna Greene, I am Bill Oram. Thank you for listening to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Subscribe, rate, leave us a review, and tell your friends. Let's take it back to the analog days of just telling your friends what you've been listening to and what you like. And if it's the Oregonian Sports Podcast, let them know!